I forgot the brush settings, so I'm gonna switch to deep canvas. So this is the deep canvas live stream, and I almost have a full palette. I left out a few pieces for accent colors, but just testing how this is going now, since I don't hear myself yet. These are not even on, so no wonder. I'm just gonna turn on my headphones to check the sound. Okay, I can at least hear myself on the phone. My screen sharing disconnected a little bit. Okay. So I can hear quite a bit of noise from that window. I usually just have it open so that I am not frying myself in here while I'm painting. Let's start painting. I'm gonna switch off this YouTube thing for a little bit and just trust that the sound is working. But if the music is too loud or my voice is too low or I'm too far away from microphone, please let me know in the chat. I will fix it as soon as I can see it. But I can't keep looking at the chat the entire time as I'm painting, so I hope you guys understand. One more thing, that I'm gonna set off the Wi-Fi on my phone so that it's not taking up any space. The internet speeds are theoretically crazy here, but internet is always internet. It's never 100% reliable in any way. I wonder if this entire canvas is like way too big for beginning sketching. So maybe I should go a little bit smaller at first and then come back. So I'm gonna crop a little bit from both the ends. Give it a little bit more widescreen look, and then I'm gonna go and crop and resize this one more time. And in settings, I'm gonna make sure that this is 300 already so that I don't forget it later. And I'm just gonna set this to 5000 just for the sketching phase. Before I have a better understanding of what it is that I'm actually doing here. So, good evening, everybody. It's 8 p.m. here. I'm gonna take off my watch. It's been one more running day. 14k today. It's not too bad. In fact, I went for a slower half first, and I did that with Vivi. So Vivi was walking with me for half of it. Right now, I don't know where she is. Vivi, minne sä menit? I'm sure she's somewhere. Usually around this time she's like having her pre-evening nap. And she has a very strict routine that she follows, which is respectable. As I'm doing this background blocking in, I wanna talk about the brush that I'm using here. So deep canvas brush, as you can see when I zoom in really close, you can see a canvas texture here. And with all of the brushes in my oil painting set, there's also a lot of emphasis on what the source of the brush itself is. So if I just tap on the canvas, I get the same texture. And this can be used as like an additional way to create more visual interest in areas where I want to have more like textured look. Hello, Selena. Tenekobin. I have Tenekobin. That's how you say it. I feel like I've been watching you for so long, but I've never got to ask you why you named yourself AngryMikko. That's a great question. I named myself AngryMikko because I hate geckos, and I'm really afraid of them. And at one point I was forced to be living in a place where there were tons and tons of geckos, and I was afraid every single night, basically, when I was a kid. So basically that's the origin story for all of my anger, and I've been angry ever since. We all have our issues to deal with. Hopefully on this channel it's mostly about art and not so much about personal childhood trauma. But if you have plenty of that, and I'm sure all of us humans do, then art is a great way to process all kinds of things that have happened to you. And maybe that's also something that I'm painting today. Foreshadowing. Okay, I've been having fun with this gradient for long enough, so let's just actually like slap in some actual colors. Whoa. Okay, I have this in the wrong area. And I immediately somehow got the music cut off. Sorry. This is probably going to be a bit longer stream, so that's why I really don't mind fiddling with the settings a little bit longer, because I'm gonna be here for some time. And if the OBS is in the right position, then I have much better chance of like seeing what you guys are writing in the chat. Teneko Bean is saying, I don't know if I'm imagining, but do you give a different reason for being angry every time? Am I on a separate layer? Maybe I am. Okay. with this brush, definitely my favorite thing is the texture, and it's still one of those brushes that is super easy to use, but the texture is always there. It's pretty like a high character brush in one way when it comes to texture, but at the same time the texture is so kind of like monotonous that it's just this organic oil painting canvas texture that even though it's visible, it's never going to like take over my painting, which is something that I like. And that's a hard balance to get right. I remember when I was working on this grain of this brush, I had some scans of my old oil painting canvases, ones that have been like gessoed and some that have been prepared, and this is one from where the base layer already has a color on it that I planned on painting over later. So usually I do this like single color oil painting layer on top so that I don't have to start painting on white. I think I could do the floor on this same layer so that I don't run into an issue where I'm already badly planning out layers. Then when it comes to cleanup, it's gonna be much easier if I just start out the right way. By the way, that blurry thing that you see behind everything, that is the starting sketch from the previous stream. So I started the previous stream by just doing like random blob shapes before I found that illustration idea. And one of those ideas just wasn't going anywhere, so I just started from zero again, and then I used that as a base here, just to give everything a little bit of color depth. Even when it looks like this brush is 100% opaque when I'm doing this, that texture can only happen if there's a little bit of transparency. So that means that everywhere around here, there's a possibility for those sort of like base colors to peek through. So for that reason, I like not just with this brush, but like any brush that has like even a little bit of transparency. If it has texture, then it basically has transparency as well. So I think that's good to remember. It's much easier to evaluate your own composition if you don't make the mistake of starting on a white canvas. But the same applies to black as well. You don't want your canvas to be black either, because it kills the color vibrancy. And you always want to be mixing colors with colors. And I guess like even further evolved way to look at that like basic rule for painting and mixing colors is you always want to mix colors without jumping over the local color. So if you get there, then you basically have the biggest color problems that beginner artists have with their paintings like already figured out. There's a huge chunk of kind of art best practices. I don't want to call them rules, but just basic best practices that, like, once you know them, art becomes a lot easier. And sure, like, I'm not trying to say that there's not an endless amount of things to learn. There are, but just knowing the basics gets you like 90% of the way there. After that, people can understand what you're saying in your illustrations. After the basics of visual communication are done, or at least communicated clearly enough in your work, then you can communicate mood and story and emotion through your art, and then it becomes also a lot more rewarding to do, because it's difficult to use all that energy trying to communicate through your art and then just basically not being understood or seen. Because even if you don't have those skills yet, I'm sure that your art already means something and it's important to you. By geckos, I specifically mean the geckos that are transparent. Like, to me, that is just so unnatural. And then they can just like hang upside down on top of my bed so that I can see their like internal organs. And they can creepily be there. They sound like birds, which is also freaky coming from that kind of a body. And then after 5 hours of like staying completely still, they can suddenly move at like insane speeds and scare the crap out of me. No. If I can in any way help it, I won't be putting myself into situations where I have to be around those creatures. Maybe I should do a box of this first, and then later round out the edges once I know that the frame is done right. Maybe the top part will be a bit higher. So if I just round out these edges, that should get me like 80% of the way there. Now that everything is like somewhat working semi-reliably, I'm just gonna very carefully put away my keyboard. User random gibberish numbers is saying, very nice to have a non-white underlayer. When I was in elementary school, our art teacher always had us start on colored paper with paint or pastels. When I was a kid in the 90s, there was a clothing brand called Gecko. I wore the Gecko shirt as often as I could. Yeah. I mean, I can understand that if I'm doing an illustration, if I'm looking at a picture, I might even go as far as say that like I can see that there's some kind of appeal in the shape of geckos, and they like in a picture can even look somewhat cute. But I have an irrational fear, and I'm not going to try to justify it with reason, because I know that like I'm never gonna get there. But when I say that I'm afraid of geckos, like those specific kinds, I don't mean like they're a little bit icky. Like, I'm afraid of geckos the same way that I'm afraid of heights, so that like I get completely paralyzed by fear. I'm dead serious about this. A little bit lighter. It's almost gray. When you're blocking in these sort of elements, I know that everybody doesn't have this opportunity, but like when I'm painting in these live streams, like I can look at the entire picture in a thumbnail size, and that to me is like, for composition purposes, much better than this what I have in front of me, because like this is too big for me. I'm way too close at this, and I would just want to show it to you in like as large scale as possible so that you can see what I'm actually doing here. But when it comes to like creating a composition in my painting, like that like tiny thumbnail of the stream preview on my streaming program, like it's so much more useful to me than this entire screen. Like, these don't have to be accurate. Like, I'm just like blocking in composition here, and if I can't tell like what kind of impact the values have in comparison to all the other objects here, then doing all this work is basically useless. I feel so terrible for like talking over this track. Honestly, this sounds pretty heavenly. Look at how nice the texture looks. Since this is a body of a cloud, I'm gonna need to duplicate this and get rid of it, but we will get more of that in a more subtle way as I build more layers. In fact, like, I should have preserved one of those layers. No. So at this point, make a duplicate and then leave it unmerged. So these are just for building up opacity, but now I still have this one layer that has that little bit of nice texture that I talked about earlier. So I'm just gonna use clipping mask and Let's just slap one of these maybe. At this point, I don't have enough information to make these sort of color decisions anyway, so I might as well start somewhere. I'm gonna set this as a clipping mask as well, and then in warp, just pull it down. And we already have kind of like sketched in some kind of an idea for light direction and cloud masses. Texture is like seasoning on food. It's so nice. Yeah, but I think just like with seasoning, you wanna like bring out the natural flavor. Like, you don't wanna hide your idea by squashing it underneath a texture. So I guess there's a balance. Let's figure out where the light is hitting this platform. I figured use this. Or is it too bright? How is your painting going this year? Like, have you started already, or are you still like in the sort of like things are getting started phase of the year, where you're still recovering from everything that has happened before? Personally, I'm in a weird phase where I have so many like big massive projects that I am doing at the same time, including this one. This is not a small painting, this is a big one. Like, they're all like going, but at the same time I feel like I have nothing done. Like the Shadow of the Colossus illustration that is on my living room table, I just taped the sketch together and it's massive. It's like 3 huge A3 papers taped together, and I'm going to have to scan them in 2 parts just so that I get the sketch in a digital format. And that's probably going to be at least a full day of just like drawing it on the desk. But is it done? No, not even close. Then I have the dark fantasy castle painting tutorial that I'm doing for Gumroad. And today I was like organizing the files for editing to get that product out as soon as humanly possible. But that's going to take forever to go through. I have just so much video footage for it. It's crazy. I also feel like I have other paintings that I haven't yet finished, like some stuff that I have done in these live streams, but I haven't done the color editing or something. Like those probably also exist. I'm trying to see if I can use this as like a subsurface scattering color of light that sinks into the body of the cloud. I think it works somewhat well, but there's also like plenty of room for editing and to go brighter with these highlights. It's always good to have that editing room rather than not have it. But I'm doing this just to color pick a new color. I'm gonna set it into the palette, just in case if this works. It's there. I'm taking this off. That was just a way to get at that color that might work. I think this is pretty usable. Those kinds you mentioned don't have great grip, so they fall so often. Like, that sounds horrifying about geckos. I think if a gecko had fallen on me on the bed, I don't know, I would probably just have a heart attack. I would not survive that. That sounds traumatic to even think about. Someone is saying, I'm in a studying setup phase, got some art books to study, got some equipment to film and edit with, learning and doing a lot outside of the actual art making. So you're like filming yourself doing the art, or sounds like you're studying multiple things, like not just making art, but like studying the art of content creation. This music makes me feel like I've just entered Limgrave. Which is honestly like perfect for this painting. I'm sure there's somebody like who's like stepping into this stream and wondering like, what are these vibes? Like, I thought that this is an art stream. Maybe these are a little bit too samey. I can fix that later. I think I just need like one good red in there to give me some faith that this is all gonna work out. Let's see what I have in my palette. I think that's pretty okay, but like there's like one more level of it that I think could be just a little bit more punchy. Yes, I'm gonna set this in the palette. And also this, since it's what I was painting with. So for anybody new to using my palettes, this top left corner is always the color of my light source, always, because that defines how all the other colors are shaded. That also, like when you know your light color, you know your shadow colors. So it like makes all the decisions. And then all of the elements are just grouped from there on out. Except maybe these two. Maybe I could just like skip it over here. Actually on this side. They have like internal logic to them. Like for example these, I thought that they could be the same like plant color. Did I increase the size already? Is way too much. Let's do 700. If I regret that later, I can always come back down. This sounds like it would be great for the Shadow of the Colossus video. This is probably better if I round this railing. I don't want everything to be just like 90-degree angles, so I'm gonna switch off the drawing assist and then just do this by hand. Gonna look a little bit janky, but I like janky. Just want to give like a bounce-like feeling for this light coming from through the, not the hole at the end of the station, but the light being reflected from the floor. I could transform these in place. I just want there to be this human-made element in my painting, so when I know that like tiny little wonkiness in these sort of elements doesn't really harm the readability of the message, then I'd rather have my weird handmade elements in there. It just gives a little bit of warmth to to the message, in my opinion. And a different kind of texture, the kind of texture that is like unique to the way that I paint. I inverted the colors just so that I can see myself, like see better what I'm doing, because everything was just like dark and dark, and it's impossible to tell what these brush strokes are even doing in the illustration. I think that spacing went like pretty well, like on the first try. Parfatsi is saying, happy to see a new video. Happy to see you here. Lisley Art is saying, I am continuing the planning of the big project, but I've done a few acrylic abstracts, and so it continues. Abstracts sound, honestly, what I would probably enjoy right now. Like an abstract oil painting would be so fun after this Shadow of the Colossus thing. It is so difficult, like the illustration is so hard to do. think I need to punch through those front windows as well, since I'm doing this. With these sort of details, you don't want to do like detail that is smaller than what the activity level of the texture is. So if there's like a bump in the texture and that kind of like offsets the way that anybody would read what you are painting in those like tiniest details, then it just means that your tiniest details are too small. Is it locked? It's not locked. I think I'm just going over the lines now. Maybe I should also paint these, just to keep it consistent. I'm not like 100% sure what I'm doing, but like the feeling is somewhat slowly coming in there. Just like a tiny hand here. This is basically just a guess color, but you have to start somewhere. Bigger brush. This is really not that precise, so I'm just trying to see what kind of effect it will have in the rest of the painting. Also super easy to adjust later, so these sort of like organic composition elements you really shouldn't stress about, because usually that kind of like detail worrying is preventing you from like taking like bigger risks, trying new things. And if you have that mentality that like I can just keep doing this over and over, you will have so many like more variations that you can go through. Like even if you don't have an idea on what you want the final look to be, like if you just have that mentality that like I will just keep trying and I will know it when I see it. But if you try to do it like right the first time around, usually it will like make your brushstroke super stiff and you don't get that spontaneous organic look that has a little bit of movement to it, that is like not entirely in your control anyway. And this way you can kind of like tease out that spontaneous look into your works. I think it just takes a little bit of like humility to understand that like all of this could be just like me making a huge mistake that needs to be fixed. It's not necessarily the right way at this point. I probably don't have the information to make those sort of like calls yet anyway. How are we doing on time? 1 hour. Really? I think still a lot to do, but it's not too bad. This lay artist saying, I want to keep adding to them, to those abstract acrylic paintings, I assume. I keep looking at them thinking I should add something that's recognizable in them, but maybe I should accept that the blankness and just start a new one. I think if when you start a painting that is an abstract painting, like maybe at that point you should decide that this is going to be abstract. Because if something that kind of like starts looking like something, then you can very easily be sidetracked into a completely different form of painting by trying to carve out something that is recognizable, and then you have like a completely different workflow to consider. Somebody's saying round brush. No, this is a deep canvas brush. The entire painting is gonna be done with deep canvas brush. Why mute? Sometimes I have to concentrate on painting, and then, especially when I'm thinking about design stuff, then I will have to be a little bit more quiet than normal in those points. I feel like I should apologize, but like at the same time it's important for the painting, so if that's okay, I'm not going to. I feel so much better after painting the backpack in for some reason. I'm really happy that they let him keep it with him on this journey. This is probably like some kind of like a memory thing that sometimes happens. Watching this with the background music has put me in the mood. Nice. Anyone remember the art website that was a honeycomb? Supposed to be alternative to DeviantArt. Trying to look for it again. What happened to I have like some websites that I'm thinking of that you could mean, but I'm not sure if those are the correct choices. Also, not to like offend anybody, and I'm really sorry for the whole thing that I'm so quiet, but I didn't handpick this entire playlist. It's based on a search word on epidemic sound, and I'm surprised that it's fitting this painting idea so well. So it's kind of like hitting all of my synesthesia buttons. So it's like somebody's like massaging my brain. Music to me is really important. Like, for example, in the last live stream, I made this like probably like a dumb choice as a content creator, but I had this like song in my head when I was painting the piece all the time, and I wanted to post that picture with that song, so I posted the process from Procreate just with like that one part that was playing in my head. And that's it. That's the whole video. And it was like a minute long. And this sounds like so weird to even say now, but a minute is like way too long these days, so on social media. Because like people don't have that kind of time just to stop and look at one thing. But at the same time, if I feel like this is like the best expression of that artistic idea, then shouldn't I sometimes just do those? Just choose like doing it the way that feels true to the idea. I guess with art you just sometimes have to listen to the creative idea and just go with it. And give it time. If you wanna see like more high energy live stream, I think the last one is more like that. I'm having a real battle with saturation. I think it's a little bit too much saturation. Like something about this is just not quite right, but I can't put my finger on it. Maybe I should do like a lighten layer just to wash away all of those dark colors. I think that's a bit better. I want this post to have some kind of like electrical equipment on it as well. Like logistical reasons. And since this is like a pretty active element, I want it to be here on the empty space, where there's a little bit more space for it to read. gonna check the chat and not be so quiet for a second. I think the main elements are kind of like coming into place. It just needs a lot of edge refining. Farpazzi is saying, when you design your highlight area, like the brownish on the floor, how much randomness there is to it? 100%. If now I have like a general idea after the brownness is in there, where the light is coming from, so I can build the other elements around that. But also, for example, that bush seems to be like somewhat on the way, so it might have like a shadow on the floor as well. And those sort of things. Like it's kind of like a back and forth. It's not really about where the light is or where the objects are, but how the combination of those elements can sculpt the light in a way that it directs the attention to where I want it to be. For example, here, maybe I want the light to be like a little bit more like this shadow is depicting it like going like almost directly towards the bear, rather than like this diagonal over here, which is kind of like pointing that it would be going like past the bear. I think that way I can direct the attention to the subject of the painting and just bring in a like tiny little bit of focus. Like this is not like some kind of like make or break element of a painting. It's just one of those things that like give you a little bit of extra control over just like guiding the eye of your viewer to help them understand what you're doing in your painting. By using the car box, I can make sure that the angles are like just about in the right place. And I'm just going to tweak these edges to make sure that there are no dark edges there. Excuse me. Thank you for the beautiful body double. What's this body double? this is one of those things that like I knew immediately when this idea came to me, like I could use quick shape tool for these shapes, but again, I just want there to be that kind of like handmade look to all of these sort of like even mechanical or man-made elements. I'm not trying to say that this is the right way to do it, it's just for the message, I think it's important. I'm just like slapping in some texture. It's an old sign. It has been here basically forever. Now that I have the drawing guide visible, I can set this to perspective. Since I don't have vertical lines, I'm just going to use the picture plane edge. Make sure that I don't touch at least one of these vertical edges. I'm gonna keep the left side as it is, and I'm just gonna eyeball based on the right side so that the vertical line is vertical, since I'm going to need to move this part. I think it's vertical enough. I want there to be a little bit of light in the foreground as well, just so that the clouds kind of like wrap around and make their presence known even in the foreground. I think that's important. Now this, in theory, should be a little bit easier since I did already a little bit of that color logic exploration far off in the distance. I think I wanted this stop to feel like it's a kind of like a beautiful but lonely place. There needs to be enough value difference here to really bring it forward. Maybe I should just transform the entire thing so that it goes into the light pole shadow, and I could use that element to build those overlapping layers. So here's one of those elements where every single item and their placement like plays a part in how easy or difficult it is to read where those elements are. Just cleaning up the layers at the same time a bit as well. So here it's this color that is maybe just a tiny little bit too bright. So I'm color picking it from not the brightest part, and this is already making it somewhat darker. And then I'm using this other beam to create a shadow. To build more of those three-dimensional layers. think the background could use a little bit more warmth, so I'm adding this light effect layer. Just picking like one desaturated dark brown. Just gonna slap it somewhere around here. You also shared my artwork in Blue Sky before. I was very happy. It's my pleasure. I'm gonna read the previous comment as well. Good evening. I'm glad to catch your stream. Okay, you're such an amazing artist. Because of you, I've been enjoying landscape painting. Even bought your process too. Thank you. I'm glad you're enjoying the process. This is a deep canvas process brush, by the way, from my AngryMikko oil set. And in this series of live streams, I'm going through the entire brush pack, brush by brush. We've already gone through the previous ones, and we have all of these other ones to go through. And I'm also building these color palettes at the same time as I'm making these paintings. And these color palettes are going to be added to the brush pack for free. So once I upload them, you can just go into the My Library section on your product on Gumroad, and they will be added there. I'm not going to be sending an email separately that, hey, I added these, but they are just going to be there, downloadable for everybody. But everybody here in this live stream, you can also just screenshot this right now. I'm pretty happy with this palette, but like I still have room for 2 accent colors, so I might fill those in later. Adding a clipping mask to this, and then just dropping that dark shadow over those rails. These sorts of elements, in my opinion, are always super difficult to paint. At least since it's a tram, I don't have to do those like annoying sideways bars, which to me in every painting where I need to do them, it's always always curse myself that, like, why do I put myself through this since I already knew that this would be super difficult to paint. But I guess I also love trains, so that's just one of the side effects I have to accept to go through if I ever want to do more train paintings. Even though this is a vertical beam, I don't want it to be just a collection of like 15 different lines that are straight up and down vertical. I don't think that would be interesting for the composition. The bush is a little bit too yellow for my taste, so I'm just duplicating that and trying to add a bit of contrast with curves. Having this bit darker also kind of breaks apart that feeling where every single plane that is going further into the distance is just a lighter version of things in the foreground, and it makes the composition feel a little bit more alive and believable. Mikko's stupid pose on keyboard. Are my paws on the keyboard? I hope I'm not writing something somewhere. I noticed that on OBS, like every single element is not locked, so I can see the transform controls, so it scares me to even like accidentally touch that screen. Oh, the stream crashes. Oh, I'm surprised you are doing this with OBS. Procreate crashes when I try with OBS. The stream crashes, not Procreate. Just to be clear, is this stream, like this one, is this crashing? Or like when you are trying Procreate, is that crashing? If this thing is crashing currently, I don't know what I can do about that. I hope it's not. No, when I try it with my friends. So what I recommend you do is that you download Zoom, and then on Zoom you start a video conference or a meeting, and then share your screen via AirPlay, and you need to be in the same Wi-Fi network as your iPad, and then on your iPad you just swipe down, and in the screen share options there is going to be Zoom appearing there. Then you just click that, and then your screen is just shared to PC, and then you share that window on OBS. That's how you are watching this stream right now. There's also a setting in Procreate about screen sharing that you need to have enabled. I think it's on by default. Just make sure that you don't touch that. Basically, you know it's working when you can see all kinds of movements like this on the shared screen. If it's just showing the painting and the brushstrokes appearing there without like showing the entire UI, then it's not in the right mode. I had that happen once. I was like super upset, so I went to complain on Procreate's forums, and they just said like, just press the button, dude. And I was just like, oh, I'm gonna stop using Procreate for streaming, because honestly, if I needed to use Photoshop or Clip Paint Studio to paint in these streams, I would. This is just a tool. Sorry, don't know where that happens. Maybe some kind of memory thing. Luckily it happens quite rarely. This is the tile floor, and I'm doing it in pink just so that I can see what I'm doing. Personally, I feel like the painting is like turning out this good only because I got so lucky with this music in this live stream. I know that the unfortunate side of this is that like I'm actually listening to the music while I'm painting, which might be very frustrating for somebody who just wants me to like keep talking the entire time. But it is like a tool that I'm using for this painting as well. Obviously, it's also making me super, super happy. I mean, this is the best painting session that I've had all week. I know it's Tuesday, but I've been doing a lot of art. Or Monday? Is it Monday? Okay. It's still the best painting that I've been doing all week. I'm duplicating this just as a safety net in case this transformation goes wrong. And to do this, I'm going to need to see the grid again. Whenever you're unsure if the grid is working, you can just like stretch it out into any direction, and that should like easily show you where it's going wrong. You always want to align these nodes in the biggest possible scale. I think that's somewhat good, but I'm just worried that maybe there should be more here as well. Can I fake that somehow? Maybe that could be just like close enough. Let's not tell anybody that like these tile scratches on the floor are not actually in perfect perspective. It's fine. I think my entire like art career is just like trying to find that okayness within myself that like sometimes it's just good enough. And like doing it any more precisely would actually ruin it. Big part of like my art process is just like trying not to ruin the painting by painting it more than it needs. I want there to be like one more like silhouette type of a cloud layer. That is like just a little bit more purple. It's such a tiny difference that I would have never been able to pick it out in the color palette. Elma, welcome. to this tram stop. The problem with this being like so peaceful, it is that like it's making me peaceful as well, which is, I guess I'm just never gonna be that like high energy, shouty YouTuber in the first place, so maybe I should just lean into it. If you wanna see that sort of like screaming intro in every single video, I think that need is already fulfilled by other people on this platform. I don't want to get like all weird on you guys, but I just feel like it would be somehow disrespectful to be like screaming with this painting. For me, when a painting is working, like it's pulling me into that mood that the painting has. And like, for example, if there's like a expression in the painting, if I'm doing a character that has some kind of personality, like I'm just like there with them as I'm doing it, it's hard to explain. But the same way, when an environment has a presence to it, I just feel like I'm there. Here it's easy to color pick because there's that additive gradient layer over here. So it's just automatically giving me the right color everywhere. Like even if I'm color picking the shadow, it's getting highlighted because there's that additive layer in front of what I'm doing. That was just not necessary. Yeah, I think these are pretty like fluffy looking clouds, but when you look in closer, there's still that texture everywhere. So softness isn't really an edge thing. It's a value and shape language and color. Like all of those things contribute to if an element looks soft or not. For me, this sort of like low contrast highlights have always been difficult because it's so easy and also fun to have like full contrast everywhere, but then you lose the essence of like the mix of different kinds of textures. dandelion patch in Bloom County. What is Bloom County? I am wondering where the bear is going to. Maybe looking for the best spot to hibernate. I think that's such a beautiful way to put it. I'm trying to remind myself that it's just a painting. Okay, I'm trying to find the handrails. Mikko, you had this like elaborate idea on how to arrange your layers, so you better find them. Okay, they're here. So just to add a little bit of like reflection garbage on these handrails. First of all, I'm just gonna duplicate them first. And then I'm going to do copy canvas. And then set that over that layer. And this copy canvas layer, I'm just gonna scrunch roughly around those beams where the handrails are. Just everything. Let's just like slap it all in there. If you do this effect, make sure that you are like somewhat locked in what your final color design elements are going to be. Setting this as a clipping mask. Let's go into liquify and then just squeeze in those elements even a little bit more. Whoa, that's way too big. So I do not want any momentum on this. I think that's enough. Just setting this low opacity, just giving it a little bit of wiggle in the way that it looks. And then adding lighting on top. And that's how you get a lot of like color variety that is from the same painting. While we were at it, I could also just hide this entire thing. And then do one more copy canvas here. Then turn those layers back on. This is just to add a little bit of extra variety there. I'm just going to duplicate this over the window itself as well, setting it to lighten. And for this, I am adding a black layer mask and then just painting in whatever reflections that I think is necessary here. Can be just scratches. This kind of hue variety can be very difficult to just like hand paint. It's basically visual noise that is custom to the way that the rest of your painting is already painted. I'm gonna take a blender. I'm just gonna use soft noise blender here. Just to round off this edge without kind of pulling more attention into this corner. You can get my blenders for free on Gumroad. The link is in the description of this live stream. Rams and bears are great. Yes. It's pretty much my favorite subjects. The only thing is that, like, I think I would be a little bit scared of the lack of handrails, but at the same time, if I added one here, that would be just like obstructing the view. I don't think that would be good. Also, the beam is like in the wrong place when it comes to perspective, so I'm gonna adjust that a little bit. I saw this interesting opinion today that younger generation is so much better at content creation because to them being public with their faces and their entire presence, like it just comes like a second nature, and it's not something that they think about. But people my age that we edit and like just basically like do too much like creation, like editing and writing, and we have to look a certain way before we are on camera, and then we overthink how other people think about us when they really don't think at all. And for younger generation, during that time, they have already created like 30 different reels and posts because to them it's just a numbers game. And it might sound like I'm somehow thinking that that's a negative thing. Like, that's not at all the case. I think it's the other way around. I wish that I could just have more kind of like relaxed way of posting about my art and process without making it such a huge production every time. Because I think that there are plenty of like small things that I never say because I always think that like these aren't interesting. And then when you do that long enough, you kind of like edit out a huge part of your entire personality at the same time. And it's also a much more consuming process, not just like the entire editing and like the production part, but it's a much consuming part when you kind of paint yourself into this kind of corner that you're trying to give a certain kind of impression of yourself and your work every single time, and then you try to live up to this impossible standard that you basically created for yourself online by putting these sort of like walls to what you can and can't publish. Wow, I disconnected. Now I'm connected again. Sorry. I want to add a very subtle shadow to the clouds on the floor. It just needs to be against the cloud, but at the same time not create a distracting contrast over there. So I need to be careful with this. I'm trying to experiment if I can add like fringe colors to these shadows. So I'm gonna do that on a lighten layer. It's very difficult to find the right color for this, so I recommend just painting it in first and then going into hue and saturation and trying to find it that way, rather than trying to get it right the first time. I think this part is the only part where it's distracting to me, so I'm selecting that separately and then just darkening it, because it's only going to be visible where it's lighter than whatever is underneath it. That way I can make sure that it kind of stays there. I think this platform also needs a little bit of thickness. Not sure where would be the right place to paint it. So I'm just gonna slap it on everything, I guess. No, we're gonna do it underneath the platform. I think still the hardest part about Procreate, technically to me, is moving layers in a layer stack. Just like holding my hand still to activate a layer for moving. I mess it up so often, and I then end up creating like layer groups, or creating a layer group accidentally is the most annoying thing that can happen. It's just easily fixable. It's just kind of work that I never want to do. I have so rarely any need to create layer groups that maybe for that reason it feels extra annoying. It's like I try so hard to be as carefree about layer creation as I possibly can, but then I accidentally do like very high level layer management actions. Okay, we are closing 3 hours in this stream, and I don't want to keep you here all night. But I don't think it's bad. I think it's getting there slowly. I think there's still a little bit of contrast issue here in the background, so I'm gonna do a lighten layer and see if I can somehow hack through it. I really like the way the texture is coming out here. It's on that like edge, like, is it heavenly music or is it just like Demon Souls boss music? Could be either one. I think I'm not gonna make it in 4 minutes, so I'm just gonna go a little bit over 3 hours. what resolution do you make your painting in? Usually, I know pretty well after the sketching phase approximately how many layers I'm going to need. But for beginners, I recommend like estimating that you need about 30 more layers than you need and have that as kind of like a buffer line. Also, if I go over the amount of layers that I can use, then I can do like layer management tricks to get enough space to do everything that I need to do. But if you're new to Procreate or digital painting in general, it's probably going to take a little while before you get that feel of like just how many layers each painting is going to need. So I recommend starting with quite a bit of buffer for yourself. Silvinka is saying, with the clouds, all I think it's more heavenly, but in a sad way. Yeah. I see Vivi is looking at me. She's napping in one of her 5+ dog beds. But for me, the only thing that makes it kind of sad that like every time that I painted the bear, I painted the dog, Vivi dog, in there, and she's not here. I hope that she's here somewhere, but I don't know if that's a happy or sad thought. Obviously, I've tried my best not to talk about it too much in this stream so that I can get stuff done. I hope the bear doesn't have to be alone here. if I flip this horizontally, the story completely falls apart, so I'm not gonna do it. It's even hard to edit it. I'm only looking at the foreground when I'm doing this, so that's what these clothes are for, and that's what this color edit is for as well. So now that those are done, I'm gonna duplicate this for later use, merge these two, and then just use this for the foreground clouds. Shadow Fringe colors, are they always in red hue or warm yellow light source? It's a stylistic thing, you can do whatever. Like if you look out at the edges of shadows, you only really see anything there if there's a subsurface scattering effect that is strong enough to like pull through something through, or there are multiple light sources where you can get this sort of like prism effect for lights and shadows, which is extremely rare. So I think it's pretty fair to just treat the effect as a stylistic mood thing. Now I'm looking at the brightest spots of the clouds, and I'm teasing out that kind of like warm reddish glow and taking out some of that green. And then just hand painting it here inside the clouds, not outside, because I don't want it to soften the edge. These are distant clouds, so they do have a hard edge in these sort of formations. Oh, I kind of like that, the way that it's coming over this sign. So since you've been so patient with me like during this like very quiet stream, this sign, the L101, it means line 101, and it means that the place where everything starts, everything ends. It's kind of like the Rider-Waite tarot card of death. You can see it as a beginning to something new or an end, depending on how you read it. And that I like that about tarot card illustrations, that it's no card really means anything. It's just can help you see what automatically comes to your mind. It's a bit like ink blot test. It tells more about you. The cards really, in my opinion, are not saying anything. It's how you read it. That's the message. It's just small hints of red, but I'm gonna toggle it on and off, and you can see it's like it has a huge impact on like how you view the entire mass of clouds once there's even just that little hint of red at the edge. I'm gonna delete that copy canvas layer to create a new one. It's gonna go with add, copy canvas, and paste. This is like the more current one. And this I'm gonna use as an overlay layer to kind of just finally punch the colors. And when you go into curves, you can adjust everything to be completely gray. Then an overlay layer. Whoa, that was not my intention. On gamma layer. This makes the overlay layer completely gray, but even if you add a little bit of angle to it, that already punches the colors. And here I want to specifically add a hint of yellow hue to highlights. So I'm just gonna crank this down a little bit and then add red in the mid-tone area. I'm gonna experiment with sky gradients to do like one more band. With a little bit more saturation in here. I think it kind of brings the sky alive, so I'm gonna keep it. Do you do weddings? Clearly I do funerals. That's funny. Hi Mikko, super excited to finally catch a live stream. Well, I'm glad you made it, Roberts Hutton. Hutton or button. I'm sorry, like honestly my eyesight is so bad I can barely see anything. So I'm sorry if I misread that. I think I love Fringe colors. CC Comer is saying will most definitely overdo it. Yes, I think that's part of the learning process though. You do need to go overboard. You do need to I hate to say this, please don't do this because I'm saying it, but I think at some point you do need to go overboard with the smudge tool and create those sort of very smudgy looking paintings, so just to get it out of your system, and then you can kind of rein it back in and then start using it as a tool and not something that is going to completely ruin your painting. I think those things are important. For example, I remember back in the day when I started using Unreal Engine to do level design mockups, and I also used it as a concept art tool because it's surprisingly handy for that, to kind of block in the space that you want there to be in a level and then paint over it. You already have a pretty good starting point with shadow colors. Anyway, the point is that there are some tools in Unreal Engine that are very tacky looking but fun to play around with, and when I was learning that system I completely overdid a lot of, for example, the volume effects, just because I thought that it looked cool. And I think that's part of every type of visual learning, that when you get a new tool, you want to find the cool new things and then just kind of fiddle around with them. It's same with traditional art. If you're somebody who does oil painting, I'm sure that everybody who does oil painting has this moment sometimes in their life that they are super excited to do paintings, and then you show your paintings to your artist friends and they say to you, oh, you found that bright neon pink tube of color in the art store, and then you realize that, oh my god, I have that same hue and paint in everything just because I got too excited about that one thing. I think that's normal and that's allowed. Now that I'm looking at this in full screen, I think one thing that it still needs, I'm not gonna waste time doing it here, but I just wanna show what I will be adding to this. I think these sort of supporting beams, they could be a lot more technical and just have that sort of supporting beam grounded garbage stuff that could play well with these sort of bloom lights. And the same for here as well, some kind of supporting beam structure like this could work well. And maybe some chords in between, because there's probably a light sign here at the end. Something like that. And then that's the painting. Okay. Thank you to everybody who joined this stream. I hope that this wasn't too depressing for you. I'm pretty happy with the way that the painting turned out. I'll see you guys in the next one. I'm just gonna check if there are any more questions. No. Do you do weddings? Yes, of course. And funerals. And sometimes sex parties. Okay, I'm Mikko, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!